The story of Ota Benga is a dark and disturbing chapter in human history, a stark reminder of the cruelty and dehumanization that can arise from racism and the pursuit of scientific curiosity at any cost. In the early 20th century, Ota Benga, a young man from the Booty Pygmy people of the Congo, was captured and brought to the United States, where he was exhibited as a savage and a missing link in the evolutionary chain. This exploration and dehumanization, fueled by the prevailing racist ideologies of the time, led to a tragic and ultimately fatal journey for Ota Benga. In this video, we'll delve into his heartbreaking story, exploring his capture, his exhibition at the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair and the Bronx Zoo, and the public outcry and protests that eventually led to his release. And who knows, perhaps the next big discovery in historical research or the fight for social justice will be made by someone watching this video right now. Ota Benga's story began in the dense equatorial forests of the Congo Free State, where he lived as a member of the Booty people, a group of indigenous pygmy hunter-gatherers. His life, however, was tragically disrupted by the brutal forces of colonialism and exploitation. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Congo Free State was under the oppressive rule of King Leopold II of Belgium. Leopold's regime, driven by greed and thirst for resources, established the Force Publique, a brutal militia that terrorized the Congolese people, forcing them into labor and extracting valuable resources like rubber. Ota Benga's village was not spared from this violence. The Force Publique attacked his community, killing his wife and 2 children. Benga himself only survived because he was away on a hunting expedition when the attack occurred. However, his ordeal was far from over. He was later captured by slave traders from the rival Bashchachel tribe, who saw him as a valuable commodity to be sold to the highest bidder. In 1904, Samuel Phillips Werner, an American businessman and explorer, arrived in the Congo with a mission to bring back a group of pygmies for exhibition at the Louisiana Purchase Exposition in St. Louis, Missouri. This exposition, also known as the St. Louis World's Fair, was a grand showcase of Western culture and technological achievements, but it also included exhibits that reinforced racist stereotypes and the exploitation of indigenous peoples. Werner encountered Ota Benga while on his way to a Batwa pygmy village. He purchased Benga from the slave traders, exchanging him for a pound of salt and a bolt of cloth. Werner later claimed that he had rescued Benga from cannibals, a common narrative used to justify the exploitation and removal of indigenous people from their homelands. Despite the language barrier and cultural differences, Werner and Benga formed a bond during their journey. Werner eventually convinced Benga and a small group of Batwa men to accompany him to the United States, promising them a chance to see the world and experience a different culture. However, this promise would soon turn into a nightmare for Ota Benga, as he was thrust into a world of racism, exploitation, and dehumanization. Ota Benga's arrival at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904 marked the beginning of his public exhibition as a human curiosity. The fair, a grand celebration of American progress and technological achievements, also served as a platform for showcasing exotic cultures and peoples from around the world. Benga and the other Africans he traveled with were immediately thrust into the spotlight, becoming objects of fascination and scrutiny for the thousands of visitors who flocked to the fair. Benga, in particular, captured the public's attention with his friendly demeanor and his unique physical characteristics, including his filed teeth, a traditional practice among the Booty people. The press, eager for sensational stories, often misinterpreted Benga and his companions, portraying them as savages and cannibals. One newspaper even claimed that Benga was the only genuine African cannibal in America, highlighting his filed teeth as a grotesque and exotic feature. The Africans, realizing the public's curiosity, began charging visitors for photographs and performances. However, their attempts to maintain some semblance of privacy and cultural identity were often thwarted by the crowd's intrusive fascination. W.J. McGee, the anthropologist in charge of the exhibit, intended to present a scientific and educational display of the different cultures represented at the fair. However, the public's desire for spectacle and entertainment often overshadowed any educational value. On July 28, 1904, the situation escalated when the Africans, frustrated by the crowd's behavior and their own confinement, put on a mock, savage performance, imitating the Native Americans they had seen at the fair. This performance, which played into the racist stereotypes and expectations of the audience, led to a near riot, requiring the intervention of the 1st Illinois Regiment to restore order. Amidst this chaos, Benga found an unlikely ally in Geronimo, the legendary Apache leader who was also exhibited at the fair. Geronimo, recognizing Benga's plight and his shared experience of being displayed as a curiosity, developed a respect for the young booty man and even gifted him one of his arrowheads. After a brief return to Africa, where he struggled to reintegrate into his native culture, Ota Benga accompanied Werner back to the United States. Werner, hoping to find a suitable place for Benga and perhaps even secure a job for himself, arranged for Benga to stay at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. Initially, Benga found some solace in the museum's environment. He enjoyed exploring the exhibits and learning about different cultures and the natural world. He was even given a Southern-style linen suit to wear while entertaining visitors, adding a touch of formality to his interactions. However, as time passed, Benga's homesickness and sense of displacement grew. The museum, with its static displays and silent halls, became a source of discomfort and even torment for him. He longed for the familiar sounds and sights of his African homeland. The birdsong, the rustling leaves, and the vibrant life of the forest. In their 1992 book, Ota Benga, The Pygmy in the Zoo, authors Philip Werner Bradford and Harvey Bloom captured Benga's feelings of alienation and confinement. What at first held his attention now made him want to flee. It was maddening to be inside, to be swallowed whole, so long. He had an image of himself, stuffed behind glass, but somehow still alive, crouching over a fake campfire, feeding meat to a lifeless child. Museum silence became a source of torment, a kind of noise. He needed birdsong, breezes, trees. Frustrated and disillusioned, Benga began to act out, playing into the savage image that had been imposed upon him. He attempted to escape the museum, and when asked to seat a wealthy donor's wife, he hurled the chair across the room in gesture of defiance. Meanwhile, Werner's financial struggles and his unsuccessful negotiations with the museum for employment added to the growing tension. Realizing that the museum was not a suitable long-term home for Benga, Werner began searching for another placement, ultimately leading to a fateful decision that would further exasperate Benga's plight. Ota Benga's ordeal took a turn for the worse when, in 1906, he was transferred to the Bronx Zoo. William Hornaday, the zoo's director, initially employed Benga to help maintain the animal habitats. However, Hornaday soon realized that the visitors were more interested in Benga than the animals, and he saw an opportunity to exploit this curiosity. Benga was placed in an exhibit in the monkey house, alongside an orangutan named Dohong. This blatant act of dehumanization, fueled by the racist ideologies of the time, sparked outrage and protests, particularly from African American clergymen who saw it as degrading and offensive portrayal of a fellow human being. The zoo, however, defended its actions, claiming that the exhibit was educational and that Benga was being treated well. They even encouraged him to hang his hammock in the monkey house and to shoot his bow and arrow at a target, further reinforcing the image of him as a primitive and uncivilized person. A sign outside the exhibit read, "The African Pygmy, Ota Benga. Age, 23 years. Height, 4 feet 11 inches. Weight, 103 pounds. Brought from the Kasai River, Congo Free State, South Central Africa, by Dr. Samuel P. Werner. Exhibited each afternoon during September." This exhibit, a blatant example of scientific racism and exploitation of indigenous peoples, drew sharp criticism from various quarters. James H. Gordon, a prominent African-American clergyman, condemned the exhibit as demeaning and harmful, stating that it was absurd to make moan over the imagined humiliation and degradation Benga is suffering. Despite the controversy, the zoo continued to exhibit Benga, allowing him to roam the grounds but refusing to pay him for his work. Benga, increasingly frustrated and agitated by the constant attention and the dehumanizing treatment, began to act out, engaging in mischievous and sometimes even violent behavior. The public outcry, however, continued to grow. Robert Stewart MacArthur, a spokesperson for the delegation of black churches, publicly criticized the zoo's actions, comparing them to brutalization of a human being after Christian missionaries had gone to Africa to Christianize the people. Eventually, facing mounting pressure and criticism, the zoo removed Benga from the exhibit. However, his ordeal was far from over. He remained in the United States, struggling to find his place in a society that had dehumanized and exploited him. After his release from the Bronx Zoo, Ota Benga found himself in another unfamiliar environment, the Howard Colored Orphan Asylum in Brooklyn, New York. This orphanage, overseen by Reverend James H. Gordon, provided Benga with shelter and care, but it also marked another chapter in his displacement and alienation. The constant media attention and public curiosity surrounding Benga made it difficult for him to adjust to his new surroundings. In an attempt to shield him from the unwanted scrutiny, Reverend Gordon arranged for Benga to be relocated to Lynchburg, Virginia in 1910. There, Benga lived with the family of Gregory W. Hayes, a local resident. Gordon, hoping to facilitate Benga's integration into American society, paid for him to have his teeth capped and bought him American-style clothing. He also arranged for Benga to receive tutoring in English from Anne Spencer, a respected poet and teacher in Lynchburg. Benga, eager to learn and adapt to his new environment, embraced these opportunities. He attended elementary school at the Baptist Seminary in Lynchburg, improving his English skills and gaining a basic education. Once he felt confident in his English proficiency, Benga discontinued his formal education and began working at a tobacco factory in Lynchburg. He started to save money, dreaming of returning to his homeland in Africa. This period in Lynchburg marked a relatively stable and hopeful time in Benga's life. He had found a supportive community, gained some independence, and was making plans for his future. However, the outbreak of World War I in 1914 would shatter his dreams and ultimately lead to a tragic end. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 dealt a devastating blow to Ota Benga's hopes of returning to Africa. With passenger ship travel halted, his dream of reuniting with his people and reclaiming his cultural identity seemed to slip away. Benga's despair deepened, and he struggled to find meaning and purpose in a world that had taken so much from him. On March 20th, 1916, at the young age of 32 or 33, he decided to end his life. In a poignant and symbolic act, Benga built a ceremonial fire, chipped off the caps that had been placed on his teeth to assimilate him into American society, and shot himself in the heart with a borrowed pistol. This act of defiance, a reclaiming of his own identity and a rejection of the forced assimilation he had endured, marked a tragic end to a life filled with hardship and displacement. Benga was buried in an unmarked grave in the black section of the Old City Cemetery in Lynchburg, near the resting place of Gregory Hayes, the man who had taken him in and offered him some semblance of normalcy. However, over time, the graves of both men were lost, their remains seemingly vanishing into the anonymity of history. Local oral tradition suggests that Benga and Hayes were eventually moved to White Rock Hill Cemetery, a burial ground that later fell into disrepair. This further symbolizes the neglect and marginalization that Benga faced, even in death. However, in 2017, a historical marker was erected in Lynchburg to commemorate Ota Benga's life and acknowledge the injustices he endured. This marker, a small but significant gesture of recognition, serves as a reminder of the importance of remembering and learning from the past, and of striving for a more just and compassionate world where such exploitation and dehumanization are never repeated. Ota Benga's story, a tragic tale of a man caught in the crossfire of colonialism, racism, and scientific curiosity, continues to resonate today. It challenges us to confront the dark legacy of our past, to acknowledge the suffering of those who have been marginalized and exploited, and to work towards a future where all individuals are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or cultural background. The story of Ota Benga, while tragic, has not been forgotten. His legacy continues to inspire reflection, spark conversations about racism and social justice, and challenge our understanding of humanity and the ethical treatments of all individuals. In 1992, Phillips Verner Bradford, the grandson of Samuel Phillips Verner, co-authored a book with Harvey Bloom titled Ota Benga, The Pygmy in the Zoo. This book, a result of extensive research and interviews, brought Ota Benga's story to a wider audience and sparked renewed interest in his life and the injustices he endured. Bradford's book also highlighted the ongoing controversy surrounding the American Museum of Natural History's display of Ota Benga's life mask and body cast. Despite objections from Verner and others, the museum continued to label display as pygmy, failing to acknowledge Benga's name or his individual identity. The publication of Bradford's book has inspired a wave of creative works, both fictional and non-fiction, that explore Ota Benga's story and its implications. In 2020, the Wildlife Conservation Society, which operates the Bronx Zoo, issued a formal apology for the zoo's treatment of Ota Benga and its role in promoting eugenics, a pseudoscientific movement that advocated for selective breeding and racial hierarchy. This apology, while long overdue, represents a significant step towards acknowledging the injustices of the past and promoting a more inclusive and respectful understanding of human diversity. The story of Ota Benga serves as a stark reminder of the dark side of human history and the enduring consequences of racism and prejudice. His journey from the forests of the Congo to the exhibition halls of America highlights the injustices faced by indigenous people and the struggles of those deemed different by the dominant culture. If this exploration of Ota Benga's story has moved you, I encourage you to delve deeper into his life, the historical context in which it unfolded, and the ongoing efforts to ensure that such exploitation and dehumanization are never repeated. And remember, the pursuit of knowledge and understanding must always be guided by ethical principles and a respect for the inherent dignity and worth of every human being. By learning from the past and embracing a commitment to justice and equality, we can honor the memory of Ota Benga and contribute to a world where all individuals are free to live their lives with dignity and respect. Thank you everyone for watching. My name's the Big Y. Don't forget to drop a like, and if you're new to the Why Not family, a follow. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.